Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how I built my Bolas Control deck, and I only play in Vintage, so no cards are restricted, of course. First we have our centerpiece, of course, the Bolas Planeswalker. Most of the deck is centered around his final ability there, mainly the discard. And I think we all know that he's pretty damn costly at 8 mana. First we'll go through our lands. We have 4 islands. Six mountains. And 8. 8 swamps, since black is our primary color. Now we'll go through the special lands. We have 1 drowned catacomb, which is good. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island or a swamp. So that's pretty good. Most of these double colored lands don't give you that option. And it adds blue or black. Dwar Isle Refuge, same deal, but it comes in tapped no matter what, and you gain 1 life when it enters the battlefield. Extra life's always good. Is that Guildgate, blue or red, enters the battlefield tapped. Sulfur Falls, same as Drowned Catacomb, but it adds blue or red. Blood Crypt, same deal, black or red, but you can have it enter the battlefield untapped if you pay 2 life. And we have 2 Crumbling Necropolises. Enters the battlefield tapped. It can add blue, black, or red, so this is a good way to get domain pretty quickly. We have our 2 double lands, Izet Boilerworks and Dimir Aqueduct. So as you can tell, this deck is going to be fairly slow, but once it gets rolling, it is very, very hard to beat. Next up, we have creatures, and we'll be starting off with 2 Nightscape Familiars. Blue and red spells you cast cost 1 less, which is good because the average mana cost in this deck is between 4 and 5. You can pay 1 and 1 black to regenerate it, which is definitely good because you want this on the field. They're both 1/1s. Then we have Sidraxis Spectre. This is a fairly quick 3-drop if you get domain in your opening hand. It's flying, 3/2. Whenever Sidraxis Spectre deals damage to a player, that player discards a card, which is the main mechanic of this deck, card discarding. And it has an unearth cost for 1 and 1 black. Next up, we have 3 Hellfire Mongrels. They are 2/2. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 2 or fewer cards in hand, Hellfire Mongrel will deal 2 damage to him or her. Given the amount of discard in this deck, this will definitely come in handy. Next we have 2 Lavaborn Muses. They are 3/3. Surprisingly, they don't have flying, even though they're a spirit, but hey, what are you going to do? They do the same thing, but they do 3 damage instead of 2. Oh, and they cost 4. Next, we have a single clone. It's a decent 4-drop, depending on what creatures are on the field. It comes into the battlefield as a copy of any creature. This can be good if your opponent has a big creature on the field, or you just want to get more Lavaborn Muses. Then we have 2 Blazing Spectres. They are 4-drops at 2 colorless and 1 black and 1 red. Flying Haste, 2/2. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. Again, it's the main mechanic of the deck. And lastly, we have 2 Sangromancers. Again, another 4-drop. 3/3 flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may gain 3 life. When an opponent discards a card, you may gain 3 life. That second effect is definitely what we're going for. Next we have instants and sorceries. First we have Despise. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a creature or planeswalker card from it. That player discards a card. This card is great for getting rid of big threats. For obvious reasons. Then we have Duress, a very similar card. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards that card. This is yet another card that's good for getting rid of planeswalkers, because those can be a pain in the ass. Next we have this double card here, Rise and Fall. Rise is blue and black. Fall is black and red. Excuse me. Rise. Return target creature card from a graveyard and target creature on the battlefield to its owner's hands. This is a good way to keep control of the board, while at the same time getting one of your Loveborn Muses, Sangromancers, or Hellfire Mongrels out from the grave. And then Fall, target player reveals 2 cards at random from his or her hand, then discards each non-land card revealed this way. This is good because typically you don't want your opponent choosing which cards they get to discard. Then we have 3 Blightnings. Blightning deals 3 damage to target player. Target player discards 2 cards. And at 3 mana, that is one hell of a card for this deck. We have Recoil, another 3 mana, but this one is blue and black. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, then that player discards a card. If your opponent is down to no cards in hand, and they have a serious threat on the field, this is your card. You'll just send it right back to their hand and right to the graveyard directly afterwards. Next we have a single Mind Rot for 3 mana. Target player discards 2 cards. I didn't put too many of these since I had since I had 3 Blightnings on hand. But, you know, discarding is discarding, and that's good. Not great, but good. Then we have a single Divination. It's good to have card advantage. Draw 2 cards. Next, Frightful Delusion. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. That player discards a card. So no matter what, your opponent's going to discard a card from this. If you're able to actually counter the spell, that's just a huge bonus. Then we have 2 Cruel Ultimatums. A bit costly at, let's see, 7 mana. But its effect is definitely worth the cost. Target opponent sacrifices a creature, discards 3 cards, loses 5 life. You return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, then gain 5 life. It's not either or, it's both. It's very, very similar to Nicol Bolas Planeswalker's final ability. Now on to enchantments. First up we have Quest for the Nihil Stone, or Nihil, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. 1 black, not a bad cost. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may put a quest counter on Quest for the Nihil Stone, so that won't take long at all. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, and Quest for the Nihil Stone has 2 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 5 life. That's huge. Next, Shrieking Affliction, very similar card, also at 1 black mana. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, they lose 3 life. Not quite as much as Quest for the Nihil Stone, but close enough that it's still a huge chunk. Okay, here we have Soul Ransom at 4 mana. Enchant creature, you control enchanted creature, which is great if your opponent has some serious threats on the board again. Now at any time, your opponent can discard 2 cards for you to sacrifice the enchantment, giving them control of their creature, but they will be discarding 2 cards, and you will be able to draw 2 cards, which will give you some serious card advantage. So, as the card's name suggests, you are essentially holding their creature hostage. And now for Painful Quandary. A lot of people don't seem to like this card, but I've always gotten it to work. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player can either pay 5 life or discard a card. By the time you get this onto the battlefield, their hand will probably be so devastated they might not even have a choice but to pay 5 life. And finally, Elder Mastery. Again, another costly card. It's at 6, and you need Domain for it. Enchant Creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, and it has flying, so this would be a good thing to put on your Nightscape Familiars, or your Hellfire Mongrels, or even your Lavaborn Muses. You know, just to get more things in the air to take care of aerial threats. Whenever an enchanted creature deals damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards. So if your opponent doesn't have any kind of aerial defense, this card will destroy them. And to finish off the deck, Unscythe Killer of Kings. It costs 1 blue, 2 black, and 1 red. It's a legendary artifact, so you can only have 1 on the board at a time, but there's only 1 in this deck, so you don't really have to worry about that. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has First Strike. That's great for defense. Whenever a creature dealt damage by the equipped creature, this turn is put into a graveyard. You may remove that card from the game. If you do, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield, and it costs 2 to equip. That's actually a pretty damn decent equipment for 4 mana and a 2 colorless equip cost. That's a good way to build up your defense and keep your opponent's larger enemies at bay. So now I'll just shuffle up the deck and we'll get a test hand. Alright, with the deck shuffled, let's take a look at the opening hand. Okay, we have Quest for the Nihil Stone, a Mountain, Shrieking Affliction, Frightful Delusion, Painful Quandary, Island, and Blightning. This is a little disappointing since we don't have Domain, but with Quest for the Nihil Stone, Shrieking Affliction, Painful Quandary, and Blightning in hand, when we do get Domain, it'll be doing quite a bit of damage fairly early on. Let's see what the next 3 cards would be for the next 3 turns. Swamp. Okay, so we would have Domain pretty quickly. Another Blightning. Their hand would be just about gone already. And a Nightscape Familiar to help us with our mana costs. So that's not too bad. But let's try another one. There, so we know we don't get the same one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, this one seems to have more lands. Swamp, Unscythe, Blood Crypt, Hellfire Mongrel, Swamp, Recoil, Sulfur Falls, and Duress. Wait, is that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh. Grab one more than I needed to. Okay, so we have Swamp, Unscythe, Blood Crypt, Hellfire, another Swamp, Recoil, and Sulfur Falls. So in this opening hand, we do have Domain. We have Recoil to take care of the board. Hellfire Mongrel will do some damage with when they start discarding. And Unscythe, which can be put on Hellfire Mongrel to make it a 5/5 threat. And you can build up an army with its secondary ability there, with the 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So all in all, I think it's a pretty good deck. A little slow, but once you get the ball rolling, you'll definitely have your opponent on the ropes. And I found that this deck works great against green-red aggro and white and blue control. Those seem to be the decks I fare the best against using this. Also, this deck is great for Two-Headed Giant if you play that format. That way your opponent's creatures can kind of play defense while you start eliminating your opponent's hands. Or you can just focus on one for to make 100% sure that you get damage in with this. Alright, well, leave a comment, like, subscribe if you really liked it. Let me know what you guys think.